On the nomination of Dara Lindenbaum to be a commissioner on the Federal Election Commission, the independent agency responsible for enforcing the federal campaign finance laws. This committee's last hearing on FEC nominees in November 2020 included 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, who were later confirmed by the Senate to restore a quorum to the commission. We handled it well in the committee, and it got done. Just like to point that out. That was my paraphrasing of the situation. Now we are considering Ms. Lindenbaum's nomination to fill the seat being vacated by Commissioner Walther. The FEC is charged with a critical role in ensuring accountability in our system of government, and it was established by Congress in the wake of the Watergate scandal to restore the public's faith in our electoral processes, to make it clear that in America, politicians must play by the rules so that the votes of the people decide our elections. Now, 47 years later, the work of the FEC is as important as ever. The 2020 election cycle was the most expensive in history. Total spending was over $14 billion, and $8 billion was spent on political advertisements alone. And too many voters feel like their voices are being drowned out. At the same time, the Commission is facing the challenges that arise given rapidly evolving technologies and the ongoing threat of foreign interference in our election. It is a big and important job. But Dara Lindenbaum is an excellent nominee who is more than capable of taking it on. Ms. Lindenbaum has extensive experience in election and campaign finance law, with years of experience working for a civil rights nonprofit and in the private sector. She also has firsthand experience at the FEC, where she worked as a law clerk early in her legal career, and her work representing clients before the FEC would enable her to bring an important perspective to the Commission. She is both well-qualified and well-respected. Last week, we received a letter from 30 of the nation's top campaign finance lawyers. The letter enthusiastically, that's their words, not mine, recommends Ms. Lindenbaum's confirmation, and it is signed by Republicans, Democrats, and independents, including Lee Goodman, a former Republican chairman of the FEC, and Carl Sandstrom, a former Democratic commissioner. In the letter, these attorneys praise her as a thoughtful and conscientious advocate and a genial and inclusive colleague. I agree with their conclusion that she will be an excellent addition to the Commission. Without objection, I will submit this letter to the record. I will submit it. No objection, because he's so genial. Ms. Lindenbaum learned about Republicans and Democrats getting along at a young age from her own family. Growing up, her parents supported different political parties. And so every election day, she would take 2 trips to the polling place, one with her mom and one with her dad. Her parents, Sandy and Leslie, are both with us here, along with her husband, Jonathan. But I understand that for some reason, you didn't think, Dara, that it would be a good idea to bring your 3-year-old twins here. Her parents' example will serve her well on the Commission, which has suffered from partisan divides and stalemate. As we know, no more than 3 commissioners can be from the same political party, but it requires 4 votes to take most action. So when votes consistently fall along party lines, very little gets done. It sounds a little like this place with the tie. For example, the FEC has not enacted any major disclosure rules or internet regulations in over a decade. Hundreds of enforcement cases have been left unresolved. This is not fair to the candidates of any party or to the public. While I continue to urge my colleagues to pass legislation to address some of these issues, it's also up to the commissioners to figure out ways to work across party lines and find bipartisan agreement. I know that Ms. Lindenbaum is up to the task and look forward to hearing more today about how she will work with fellow commissioners on the Federal Election Commission. As everyone on this committee knows, we can never take our democracy for granted, and elections and our election laws that enforce them is a big part of that. We certainly feel that as our hearts and our minds today are with the people of Ukraine, who are literally putting their lives on the line to protect their democracies. And our job is not only to help them, but also to support our democracy here at home by making sure that we have an agency that fulfills its mission to protect the integrity of the federal campaign finance process, and in so doing, to keep our democracy strong. I'm confident that you're up to this challenge, and I look forward to hearing from you today. I'll now turn it over to Senator Blunt for his opening statement.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Klobuchar, for calling this hearing together. I agree with you. It's an important hearing, and I want to thank my colleagues for joining us today. Some are here in person, others, I think, virtually. I also want to welcome our nominee to today's hearing. Dara Lindenbaum is the President's nominee to be a member of the Federal Elections Commission. I'm glad to see her family and friends here today, as well as others, including those 3-year-old twins who are watching virtually, and welcome them as well. They may very well remember more of this when you remind them in the future than you think they might today. In late 2020, as Chairman mentioned, this committee gathered to confirm 3 nominees to restore a quorum to the FEC. I was chairman at the time and gave my commitment that we would get to that 4th nominee soon, and more importantly, a full slate of nominees really for the first time since February of 17 at the time, but this will be the first time in years that a majority of those serving on the commission were not on holdover status. The nominee presents another opportunity to do that, and in fact, the person she will replace, the commissioner she'll replace, has been on holdover status for nearly 13 years. It's no wonder that people look at the FEC and wonder why it doesn't get more attention, and we've given it that attention, I hope, and I think that attention with good nominees. Returning the FEC to a full slate of commissioners has already allowed the commission to continue its important work of holding hearings, of making new rules, issuing advisory opinions, conducting investigations, and approving enforcement actions. Now with a full slate, the agency's been able to do that, but it needs to work through the backlog of work that's piled up during the absence of a quorum. The FEC doesn't stop with this appointment, certainly when a single commissioner departs the agency. There are still commissioners there to do the job. The Federal Election Commission plays a vital role for campaign finance committees. As a former Secretary of State, I work with the FEC on a regular basis, and since that time, I've run in many federal elections, and I know how important a fully functioning FEC is to federal candidates who need to avail themselves of the FEC's guidance, who need advisory opinions. I also know it's important to the stability of the agency and the regulated community to have a full set of commissioners. I look forward to hearing about our nominee's campaign finance experience, her views on the FEC's operations and priorities, and how she'd approach the role of commissioner. So again, thank you, Ms. Lindenbaum, for being willing to serve and being with us here today, and I appreciate the chance we had to talk just a few days ago.
Very good. Thank you so much, Senator Blunt. I will now introduce our witness and our nominee, Ms. Dara Lindenbaum, who is, of course, the nominee to be a commissioner on the Federal Election Commission. Ms. Lindenbaum is a partner at Sandler, Reif, Lamb, and Rosenstein and Birkenstock, where she has worked since 2013. Previously, she worked at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, where she focused on election law and voting rights. She holds a bachelor's degree from Northeastern University and a law degree from George Washington University. I will now swear in our nominee. You want to stand? Ms. Lindenbaum, if you would raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You can be seated, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairwoman Klobuchar, Ranking Member Blunt, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as President Biden's nominee for the position of Commissioner on the Federal Election Commission. It is an honor to be here. I'd like to take a moment and introduce my family here with me today. My husband, Jonathan, my parents, Leslie and Sandy, Aunt Marcy and Uncle Randy, my quasi-Uncle John, my brother David, my Rock Freeman, and last but certainly not least, my best friend Amy. Here with me in spirit are my grandmother, Joan Serkis, who is watching with her entire temple in Florida, Sam Mars, who would have loved to be here to support me today, and as you said, my 3-year-old daughters, Isabel and Zoe, who are probably not watching this hearing, but maybe one day we will show it to them. I am eternally grateful to them, to my family and friends watching from home, my mentors and colleagues at Sandler, Reef, Lamb, Rosenstein, and Birkenstock, and my mentor and professor, Spencer Overton, and everyone who has helped me get to this moment. I am also honored to have the support from bipartisan colleagues with whom I have worked throughout my career. I would not be here today without all of their encouragement. As Senator Klobuchar said, I grew up with parents on both sides of the aisle. While that meant we had some spirited debates around the dinner table, the one thing they have always agreed on is the importance of voting. As a child, I got to take 2 trips to the polls on election days, one with Mom and one with Dad. And my parents instilled in me and my brother this core value of active participation in our democracy, and I have dedicated my career to the furtherance of this country's promise of civic engagement. If I am so fortunate as to be confirmed to the FEC, I will stand on this foundational belief, bringing with me my experience as a practitioner for over a decade, working with candidates, campaigns, political action committees, vendors, donors, and voters. Throughout my work in local, state, and federal elections, I bring a unique understanding of the complex systems and policies candidates and campaigns put in place to be in compliance with the law, the obstacles that are faced by all in the regulated community, and the importance of clear, transparent rules. I take the core mission of the FEC to heart, to protect the integrity of the federal campaign finance process by providing transparency and fairly enforcing and administering federal campaign finance laws. As Senator Blunt has said, we need the FEC to work so that candidates can run in a way that allows the discourse of the campaign to occur while protecting the system from those operating outside of the law. If confirmed, I intend to be a consensus builder, and I am honored to have the support from practitioners on both sides of the aisle. Both as a lawyer, as well as a mother of 3-year-old twins for whom I have to adjudicate disputes, I know that consensus will not come easily, but we must make every effort that we can. The consideration of the facts and the law in front of me will be my guideposts as I seek to provide clarity to the regulated community, increase transparency, and collaborate with my fellow commissioners to further the important mission of the FEC. It will be my duty to instill public confidence in the integrity of our system in a bipartisan manner as directed by Congress. You have my commitment that if confirmed, I will treat every party with business before the Commission fairly, objectively, and without prejudice or bias. It would be an honor to serve as Commissioner on the Federal Election Commission, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Lindenbaum, and we, of course, greet your grandma's temple from Florida, right, Senator Blunt?
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
We're very excited they're watching. You know, we don't get a lot of people watching this all the time, so we're pretty excited. Now, first of all, you have spent your career in election and campaign finance law, including appearing before the FEC as an attorney, working there as a law clerk. Why do you want to serve on the FEC at this point in your career? Yeah, I think you turned it off there. Thank you. Okay. There we go.
Yes, it has been my life's work to bolster confidence in the election system and make sure that those eligible to participate can. A functioning FEC instills public confidence in the integrity of our system and allows candidates, campaigns, and other political actors to speak. It protects the system from those who operate outside of the law and allows voters to obtain the information they need to make informed decisions at the voting booth. So if confirmed, my experience as a practitioner working across the regulated community will further the FEC's critical mission to protect integrity of the federal campaign finance process by providing transparency and fairly enforcing and administering the laws.
Thank you. Like some of our other nominees, including Republican nominees in the past, as an attorney, you've represented many clients, and I understand you've entered into an agreement with FEC's designated ethics officials on how to handle potential conflicts of interest including through recusals in some cases. Will you commit to following the terms of that agreement and the advice of the agency's ethics officials if you are confirmed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The FEC, as we have noted, has an even number of commissioners, limited to no more than 3 from a single political party, and that frequently leads to a stalemate that can hamstring the commission from initiating investigations, approving rulemakings, issuing advisory opinions. Some of the things we have talked about here with rules about the new dawn of the internet, which was many decades ago, and just talk to me about how you will commit to work with your colleagues in an effort to find consensus to ensure that critical rulemakings and enforcement proceedings can move forward, regardless of what party the candidate whose case may be before you is from.
Thank you for that question. And as you said, the only way for the FEC to function is for the commissioners to work together across the aisle to find consensus. So I start by coming with a position of respect. I am proud to have the bipartisan support of 30 of my colleagues in the political law community, some of whom I've even opposed in court and in recounts. And that position of respect is one I try to bring to everything that I do. So if confirmed, my general process will be to figure out where we can find common ground, what our sticking points are, and where there's actual room for movement.
Very good. One area where we've seen bipartisan consensus coming out of the commission is on the issue of fraudulent fundraising practices. In recent years, we've seen the emerging threats posed by scam PACs or groups pretending to fundraise for candidates, and then they pocket the money. I've heard many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle talk about it. Senator King and I are working on legislation to address this issue. Do you agree that the threats posed by these scam PACs are serious and that action should be taken?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Following the 2020 election, we've seen a dramatic increase in threats against both election officials and members of Congress. Last year, Capitol Police responded to over 9,000 threats against members, nearly double the number of threats faced by members of Congress just 3 years ago. In March 2021, the FEC issued guidance clarifying that members can use campaign funds for personal security. Can you speak to the importance of this guidance in light of the rise in threats that we're seeing?
Yes, and thank you for this. And this is one that I really do care about, especially working with candidates. And that's that candidates need to be protected. And it is an unfortunate part of what is happening right now that there are threats and legitimate reasons to believe that somebody, be it a candidate, their staff, or the campaign itself, may have threats. And I think it is important that campaigns and candidates be able to use their campaign funds. It also makes sure that those that don't have their own personal funds have the ability to find another source to actually pay for their security.
All right. Thank you. And we're continuing to look in more ways for security payments, but that's for another day. Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Baum, you've had a lot of experience before the FEC. Are there times when you've been particularly frustrated, or from your personal experience as a person that has dealt with the FEC a lot, what kind of things do you think the FEC could do that would be more helpful to campaigns and candidates and the people that represent campaigns and candidates?
Sure. So thank you for that. And one of the frustrations that I think we face as practitioners and that candidates face is time. And a complaint is filed, and it could take years to be adjudicated. And that complaint is hanging over that candidate's head, that campaign's head. And in the event of a candidate who's no longer running, they can't close their committee until after the case is closed. I think that's kind of a broader matter, and one the commission is really working on, especially since it's found a new quorum, on speeding that along. But there's also practical things, and I think that being a resource for those in the regulated community, having a way to answer questions, which the FEC is starting to do, are other ways that you can really improve the process, make it easier for candidates, especially candidates that may not have the funds to spend on lawyers to work through the process.
So on the whole idea of the files and the time it takes to process this, and I think we've both mentioned, and I know I mentioned in my comments, the importance of clearing through this backlog, but I've heard recently that the FEC is not always voting now to close files when they've reached a final determination. It seems to me that it's unnecessary to have a file out there that's still available to the public if or other attorneys if the FEC has made a final decision on that. What's your view on whether these files that have been decided on, how should they be handled?
I believe they should be closed.
Okay, good. And you'll commit to advocating for that?
Yes.
As a member of the commission? Senator Klobuchar mentioned your work and your agreement to step back if you've done legal work for campaigns that have a case. Give me the broad outlines of that for both the people you've represented, and if there are any outlines for others that your firm has represented. Just share that with us, would you?
Sure. So under that agreement, I would have to recuse myself for a period of 2 years from any candidate that I've done work with or any client, and 2 years for any matter that involves that involves Sandler Reef.
Okay. And then what if you had a question after that? How would you resolve that?
If I have a question after that, I would go and bring that question to the Ethics Council and ask for their opinion, and I would follow that opinion.
Good. As long as where your personal opinions are concerned, in the past we've heard concerns about commissioners advocating for certain legislation or commenting on potential investigations, appearing to establish their own view of this before they deal with the case. What is your view of your role as a legislative advocate or making comments on things that might appear before the commission?
If I'm confirmed, I certainly am aware that the role is to be a regulator, not a lawmaker, and I wouldn't intend to go outside those bounds. I can't speak to other commissioners, but what I can say is what I would do, which is stick to enforcing the law and regulating the law as written by Congress, not as I would want it to be. In addition, I would be working with my fellow commissioners on the yearly unanimous recommendations that they make to Congress, and I would see that as the extent to my advocacy.
And how important do you think unanimity is at the FEC?
I think unanimity would be fantastic as often as we can find it. And there are many issues that they do find full agreement on.
So what about your approach to implementing legislation that you don't agree with, your past support for changing certain campaign finance policies or other things? How would you deal with those kinds of issues?
Well, I certainly respect the different role between the role as a private lawyer versus the role as a commissioner, should I be confirmed. So my job, if confirmed, would be to enforce and regulate the law as written by Congress and interpreted by the courts, not what I want it to be.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Blunt. Senator King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up on Senator Blunt's questions, there's no question about your past affiliation with the Democratic Party, Democratic candidates. Some would argue that this commission is set up to be deadlocked. The only way to avoid that is the personal interaction among the commissioners. Do you have any thoughts about how you, as a new individual joining the commission, can try to help break the deadlock in terms by working to find compromise, to find consensus solutions to some of these issues? Because if the FEC is continually deadlocked, it can't perform its function.
Yes, Senator, thanks. And it's something that I've thought quite a bit about. It is one of the most important things for me coming into the commission, to see what I can do to be a consensus builder. And I intend to come in with a position of respect for my fellow commissioners on both sides of the aisle. I also have a letter of support from 30 of my fellow practitioners from both sides of the aisle that speaks to my ability to work well with others and to respect each other's opinion. I think that letter and that support from my colleagues in this community gives me a baseline and a level of understanding and good faith to go into these conversations so that my fellow commissioners know that I am on the same page, and we all are trying to further the mission of the agency and to provide transparency to the public and provide clear rules to those in the regulated community. So again, the heart of it is coming to a position of respect, finding out what areas we can all agree on and what areas there's some movement on.
Do you consider yourself a Democratic commissioner or a commissioner?
I would be filling a Democratic seat, but I believe that I'm coming in without any bias. Everyone in front of me will have a fair hearing, no matter what party they're from or what their policy positions are.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Very good, Senator King, the independent member of our committee.
You managed not to use the word independent, but that's okay.
It's a gauntlet, and you're still okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And thank you for appearing here today, and it's lovely that you have your family with you to support you. This is a really important day. I so much appreciated your comments and your testimony about your desire to be a consensus builder on the Federal Elections Commission if you are confirmed, and I appreciated hearing your commitment to instill public confidence in the integrity of our system in a bipartisan manner. Why is it especially important that an FEC in particular operate by consensus and in a bipartisan manner?
So I think that the way I would address that is that there are two major reasons. One is because of the way that Congress designed the commission. The only way for it to work and take action is for it to come to bipartisan agreement. But then on a different level, I think, for candidates and others in the political community, the only way you can campaign and the only way you can reach the public is knowing that you are operating under the same rules as the others that you are competing against. So the way that you do that is to know that those regulating your campaigns are going to do so in a bipartisan and unbiased manner.
Thank you for that answer. And part of ensuring that the FEC is fair and without bias is ensuring that the commissioners do not have a conflict of interest in matters that come before the commission. As I understand it, you're currently the general counsel for Stacey Abrams' campaign for governor in Georgia. If a matter came before the commission involving her particular campaign or any other campaign you've been involved in, would you recuse yourself from those issues? Why or why not?
Yes, I would follow the ethics agreement that requires that I recuse myself for any matter involving a current client or anything involving my firm for a period of 2 years. And if after that 2-year period there is some reason to believe that there could be any kind of conflict, I would go to the Ethics Council and take any advice or follow their opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you very much. Next on line with us is Senator Ossoff. Oh, he's having a technical issue, so I'll filibuster for a second. And,
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Roy.
Just a couple more questions. The FEC is subject to a great deal of litigation. You know, part of that is just to prove your outrage that the FEC voted against you. There are other litigation as well, but recently there have been instances where the agency has defaulted in litigation against it. What would be your view of defending the agency's decisions once they've been made?
I think it's important for an agency to defend itself in court. It does a number of different things, including building a record.
Do you think are there circumstances that come to mind where you would think that it would be appropriate not to litigate and just default?
Nothing comes to mind.
Do you believe the commissioner's votes on whether or not to defend the FEC in court should be made public?
I do.
Good. Thank you.
I've got one. Let me know when Senator Ossoff's on. As you know, when reviewing an FEC complaint, 4 commissioners need to find a reason to believe that there's been a campaign finance violation in order for the complaint to proceed. The consistent pattern of FEC votes that deadlock along party lines has resulted in the Commission often being unable to fulfill its enforcement role and enforce the law. If confirmed, how would you approach determining whether there is a reason to believe that a campaign finance violation has occurred?
Sure. So I would take every case in front of me with respect and view the facts and the law in front of me for making a decision. The reason to believe standard is one that has been relatively open to interpretation, and commissioners are still working through it. But in my opinion, there needs to be a reason to believe that a violation occurred based on sufficient evidence in order to take on an investigation. It is important that the FEC and the commissioners understand the weight that comes into play if an investigation is launched. And we need to take care in making those kinds of determinations.
Okay, very good. Thank you. A lot going on up here, noises in the hallway. I didn't mean you, Senator Cruz. I know you're here. Senator Ossoff is online, and then we'll hear from Senator Cruz.
Great.
Thank you, Chair Klobuchar. Ranking Member Blunt, I'm sorry I'm not there in person, just between meetings here in the office. Thanks for making this option available. And Ms. Lindenbaum, congratulations on your nomination. Thank you for joining us. First question for you, and I'm sure some of this has been covered, but want to dig in a little bit deeper, is to understand your approach to disclosures for digital electioneering communications and political advertisements, please.
Sure. Campaigns are operating in an environment that is ever-changing. You as Congress are doing your best to keep up with those changes and those evolutions that we see in every election, and it's the FEC's job to ensure that they are keeping up with those changes to the extent the Commission has the legal authority to do so. It is crucial that we maintain technological flexibility while providing the public with the transparency so that they can make informed decisions. Right now, there's a pending rulemaking that my understanding is there may be some agreements amongst the commissioners that can actually get passed. It's taken a number of attempts. But I will be working with my fellow commissioners, if I'm confirmed, to try to find consensus and to make sure that the law and the regulations that are being put forward are ones that are straightforward, clear, and can be complied with without making it impossible to take advantage of new technologies out there.
Thank you. Let's discuss how you will maintain impartiality as a member of a body whose members are often at least publicly deemed to have some partisan affiliation. Your obligation will be to apply relevant law and rules impartially without regard for personal political preferences or partisan affiliation, correct?
Yes.
And will you do so?
Yes.
And how will you ensure that you remain substantively impartial and avoid taking any action that would damage the public's confidence in your impartiality?
My guideposts will be the facts and the law in front of me, and I will take every case on its own merits and without taking into account who the respondent is or what the matter involves. I'm honored to have the bipartisan support from colleagues in the political law community who I've even opposed in court and who trust and respect that I will, if confirmed, that I will do so in a nonpartisan and unbiased manner.
Thank you. Congratulations again on your nomination. And Madam Chair, I yield back.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Lindenbaum, welcome.
Thank you.
There have been consistent concerns about public confidence in the security of our elections. Do you agree that those concerns are legitimate?
I think many of the concerns are legitimate.
Do you think that criticizing an election as stolen or otherwise invalid undermines the public faith in the democratic process?
Well, I should say first, Senator, that these matters, the election security matters, are outside the purview of the Federal Election Commission, which is solely focused on campaign finance issues and not the issues of election administration, the machines, or what have you.
Okay, with that caveat, let me ask the question again. Do you think that criticizing an election as stolen undermines faith in the democratic process?
I think it can. I think it depends on the context involved.
Who won the 2018 Georgia governor's race?
Brian Kemp.
Did his opponent, Stacey Abrams, concede the 2018 gubernatorial election?
Yes.
When?
I believe it was 9 days after she gave a speech where she acknowledged that Brian Kemp won the election, and she said that her assessment was that the law currently allowed no further viable remedy, and she said she could keep the contest going, but didn't want to hold public office if it meant scheming her way into the post. So during that speech, she said that the election was over and acknowledged that she did not win.
Okay, I guess I'm a little bit puzzled by that answer, because you said she conceded 9 days after the election, but you filed a complaint in federal court on behalf of Stacey Abrams on November 28th, which was 10 days afterwards. In the complaint, you sought to permanently enjoin the Secretary of State and the State Election Board and declare Georgia's election process unconstitutional and in violation of federal law. Is that right?
Well, again, Senator, I do need to say that any of these matters fall outside the purview of the Federal Election Commission. I would also say that that's not actually what the case did. It was not on behalf of Stacey Abrams. It was on behalf of Ebenezer Church, which is a historic church in Georgia, a number of AME churches, and Fair Fight Action and Karen Action. Stacey Abrams is not an individual plaintiff in that case.
Okay, but you were seeking an election victory for her, and in fact, as part of the complaint, you argued that Georgia's electronic voting machines were, quote, insecure and unreliable. Is that correct?
That was an argument, and then the next year, and in the 2020 election, the machines were changed. So those machines in 2018 were DRE machines with no paper trail. In 2019, the end of 2019, Georgia purchased new machines, and the 2020 machines were optical scan machines with a paper trail.
The complaint you filed argued that the machines in 2018 actually switched votes for Abrams to votes for Kemp. Is that correct?
The complaint, I believe, had those allegations in it. And those allegations were all based on affidavits and other stories from voters. The other thing I need to say, Senator, and I understand going down this line, is that case is in very active litigation. It goes to trial actually on Monday. So I am very, very much limited in what I can say about it. Talking about what was or is not in the complaint is one thing, but it would not be appropriate for me to go too far into this case.
So, but as an officer of the court, you were willing to put your name on a legal pleading alleging that the machines used in Georgia in 2018 were switching votes illegally from one candidate to another. Is that correct?
Yes.
The FEC requires a majority to undertake substantive action and policymaking, and at present, it's 3-3. When the FEC is sued, it must vote to defend itself. But the Democrats have begun consistently voting against the FEC doing its job, resulting in deadlocked votes, no-shows in court, and default judgments. Since 2020, the FEC has defaulted in court 9 times. One case didn't have a vote at all, but in the remaining 8 cases, the no-show default was because the Democratic members voted not to defend. The FEC not showing up and defending itself is troubling. Will you vote for the FEC to defend itself in suits?
Yes.
And you're committing to this committee that you will not participate in a blocking, a party line blocking of the FEC showing up and defending itself in suits?
I am committed, and I believe that it is important for an agency to defend itself in court. I think it does a number of things, including establishing a record. I cannot say definitively and there would be no possible way for that to change. I can't foresee one sitting here today, but I don't want to make that promise to you here in the event that there is something that is completely outside the realm that I don't know about, not being in the agency at the moment.
Thank you.
Next up, Senator Haggerty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on Senator Cruz's initial line of questioning, I myself ran against a Stacey Abrams-inspired Democrat opponent in 2020. I beat her by a considerable margin, more than 20 points, and she's never conceded her loss either. This is a pattern that's very disturbing. I'd like to turn my questions, Ms. Lindenbaum, to the function at the FEC, if I might. I know that you mentioned earlier that unanimity is great to achieve when possible, but there's been a lot of discussion about deadlock among the 6 members of the FEC. And I know that there are many times when the FEC fails to muster 4 votes for certain policy or enforcement activities. Is the lack of if you could just give me an idea if that reveals a lack of bipartisan consensus on changing the status quo, or is there a need to change the balance of the FEC to come out with what could be a partisan outcome?
I think the structure is established by Congress, and should Congress decide to change the structure of the FEC, I leave that decision, of course, to Congress. I think that if I were to be confirmed, I would intend to be a consensus builder and to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to try to find common ground, to try to limit those deadlocks. I think most importantly, when it comes to advisory opinions. Advisory opinion deadlocks are one of the biggest areas of frustration for practitioners on both sides of the aisle because we are not getting clear guidance on what we can and cannot do. And you as candidates and us as your lawyers need to know how to advise you properly. So I commit to you that if I'm confirmed, I will be working with my fellow commissioners to try to find as much consensus as possible, particularly on those advisory opinions.
To be clear, though, do you have an opinion yourself on whether the FEC should be reduced to a 5-member body, or should it remain at an even number?
I can say that I have practiced in many different states, and in areas where sometimes the regulatory body may have a partisan bias, and it is a hard way to practice. I again, leave it to your decision if that is a change that you and Congress decide to make, but if I'm confirmed, I will be following and part of the structure established by Congress.
Could I turn my next question is regarding holdover commissioners. I'm sure you're familiar with that circumstance. And I wanted to get your thoughts on whether you think recent practice experience is an important qualification for an FEC commissioner.
I think it is a great value to have, and I think that my experience as a practitioner will bring quite a bit to the current commissioners, and the knowledge of what parties go through and how rules and the laws affect them. I don't think it needs to be a prerequisite. I think there are commissioners on the current commission that don't have that experience, but bring quite a bit of value.
Clearly. In fact, the seat that you're taking, I think, has been, the person before you has been there since 2009. There's a holdover commissioner that's been there for 15 years.
Yes.
And it seems to me that Congress imposed a 6-year term for a reason. And that one of the good reasons for that would be to ensure that the commission includes recent practitioners who are familiar with the current state of the practice. And I expect that you would believe that your recent practice experience will benefit you as a commissioner. I'm interested to know if you think commissioners holding over for significantly more than 6 years following their appointment creates the potential that they could lose perspective in terms of the current practice of campaign finance law. Perspective and understanding both.
I'm sure it's possible. I can tell you that if I'm confirmed, I commit to serving my full term, and I also commit to staying in touch with the regulated community, and that's through these rulemakings that we do and making sure that I am understanding the comments that are coming in. Campaigns evolve by the moment, it's feeling like, and the current practices are constantly changing, so it is important for the commission, no matter the makeup, no matter who's on it, to stay up to date on what is happening, to make sure that the laws and the regulations enforcing the laws are clear and match what is happening.
Well, I agree with that. Finally, I'd like to turn to a very different subject, and that is the issue of proper disclosure, failing to truly disclose the purpose of the campaign expenditures. I think we're all familiar with the fine that the FEC announced just last week against the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign for concealing their campaign disclosures regarding the funding of Fusion GPS to concoct this fabricated Steele dossier. They did a tremendous amount of damage with this false opposition research. They did a tremendous amount of damage for years in terms of trying to undermine the credibility of a presidential administration. In doing this, they called the campaign disclosure that they used, called their payments to a law firm, Perkins Coie, as legal and compliance consulting, concealing the fact that they paid a subcontractor, Fusion GPS, for the purpose that I just mentioned, to create this fake dossier. I know you didn't work in the case at the FCC, but generally speaking, do you agree that describing a disbursement for opposition research as legal and compliance consulting fails to clearly disclose its true purpose?
I truly don't know enough about that case to be able to opine on that. I think it's important as a general matter that candidates and campaigns and other entities take care to report all of their expenditures. And I think another important aspect is for the FEC to be clear about how you actually do reporting. And it's something that's being done. The Research and Analytics Division puts out guides on how to file your reports and what should be reported and how should be reported. And this is evolving, and if confirmed, I commit that I will work with the RAD division to make sure that is very clear to all candidates.
I hope that members in the practice that you participate in right now listen carefully to your comments. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the senators. As you can see, Ms. Lindenbaum, we don't always have everyone just hanging out, listening to a nominee. One, I think we found a good time to schedule this, but two, it's you. You've answered people's questions, and I think people are genuinely interested in your nomination. I think they also are interested in the issues, as you could see, facing the FEC. We know there's been changes in our technology and everything else, and we want the FEC to be as up-to-date and able to cope with elections that are happening now as opposed to elections 100 years from now. We've appreciated how you have answered questions which are understandable about cases you've had in the past. We've had other nominees answer similar questions about clients and the like, how you pledge to follow the ethics rules, and also your broad bipartisan support as reflected in the letter that I put on the record. The fact that you're focused on consensus building, I think you can see interest in that from both sides of the aisle. So I look forward to advancing your nomination, and I encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting your confirmation. Senator Blunt, you want to say a few closing words here?
Well, Chairman, thanks for holding the hearing today. Ms. Lindenbaum, thanks for your direct answers to the questions. I think your specific understanding there's a difference in being an advocate as a litigant and the new role you would play if confirmed. I look forward to supporting your nomination and was pleased to hear your determination to serve this term, and hopefully the Congress and who's ever in the White House in the future will do a better job of either re-nominating you for that new term or finding somebody else who's willing to serve so you can leave when you want to leave. But thanks to that, I think your answers were direct. I think we understood them all, and I think we particularly should understand how well you seem to perceive the importance of this role and the importance of you performing the job of an FEC commissioner, not somebody else's job, whether that's a legislative job or an advocate's job. You're stepping into a new role if confirmed, and I hope you are.
Very, very nice. Our independent member, you good, Senator King? Okay, excellent. The hearing record will remain open for 1 week. And we say goodbye to your grandma, your twins, everyone watching. We thank your family for being with us. The hearing is adjourned. Thank you.